Hi, this is Gordon from the Get Stuff Done project, and today I'd like to take a bit of time to talk about speed. Speed is something that is both a coveted thing and a dirty word, depending on the context and depending in which aspect of business you are talking about. Many companies and many teams are driving hard to be the fastest, the quickest, the first at every single moment. And that, of course, has a number of benefits because it allows them to gain advantage by being first to market. It allows them to gain the initial data from the market quicker than any of their competitors, and it allows them to establish their presence as a market leader, as the first one in that particular sector, and that can have a real advantage. Of course, there is a learning curve, and with every thing that you do in business, there is always a flip side, and the learning curve can be very steep. And of course, there is also a very famous school of thought that actually being the second mover is actually the ideal way to go, because the first mover can sometimes suffer from creating the market, from having intense investment costs, from having to actually get that awareness, which can be very expensive in terms of marketing budget, for example, or investment in the initial product. And so the second mover comes along, takes from an already invested and formed market, an existing market share from a first mover without having all those initial investment costs. So second mover in some cases can be really advantageous as well. But I want to keep more on track about speed generally rather than necessarily first, second, or third. When I was working in some of my previous companies, there was a absolute religious adherence to speed, by which I mean if some manager were to allocate or delegate a piece of work to a team member or to a direct report, there would never be a question of when is this due by, how important is it, should it be the thing which I prioritize first and more than anything in order to get it done in the first possible instance. None of that conversation was happening. Everything was expected ASAP, everything was expected yesterday, and so even if some task was allocated at 6 p.m. On any given day, even on a Friday, it would often be expected to be completed on that very same day. And if that means staying late and working till 8, 9, 10 p.m., so be it. And of course, the person who's receiving that is generally not going to receive that work on that same day, and definitely not is going to review it and be able to reply. That's going to come later. But the sheer kind of showing of speed, of doing something immediately and directly was considered to be one of the most important things. And so that, of course, as you can imagine as I describe that scenario, is really where speed can be quite toxic. In fact, it can be quite damaging to people in terms of their engagement and ability to do things, let alone talking about prioritization and being able to decide what should be done first in the most important order. You know, if something is given as a task on a Friday afternoon and it's not that important and can quite happily be done by Tuesday, well, then it's going to be possible to work that particular task into the rest of the other tasks that can be done at an appropriate time. You know, perhaps doing a piece of the work on the Monday, completing it on the Tuesday, and delivering it. So it's really about kind of organization and not just putting speed at the first and most important thing. However, I have learned through the running of my business now for the last 7 years that actually speed can absolutely be a competitive advantage. Speed, especially if you're working across time zones, can help, because if you are able to reply and respond to something as quickly as possible, You don't lose an extra day through the time zone and their closing of business, and then you're moving into the next day, where often days can add up. So that's one direct advantage, especially in the context of working across different time zones, but also through the kind of taking of opportunities. If you're talking about actually running a business or being responsible for a part of a business, then definitely, there's the age-old saying that time kills deals. And what is meant by that, of course, is that should excessive amount of time go by, should something not be as quick as it could be, then time might kill that deal. It might not be possible to actually end up closing that deal. It might be that others respond quicker and get the business. It might be simply that a decision is made and you're no longer going to be part of that. So there's definitely a large element within competitiveness that speed can be a competitive advantage. If we talk about RDI in the business of recruiting, well, we are always being asked to search and find candidates in the quickest possible time. Most usually companies are kind of unexpectedly having to fill a key position when a senior person has left, and that makes them have to move quickly and want to fill that position as quickly as possible. And if we take a very long time to be able to provide candidates, it's not going to work. Companies to move forward. So especially in RDI's business, there's definitely a need for speed. I think in other places, speed should also be apportioned to what is being done, because usually the trade-off from speed is quality. You can do something incredibly quickly, but you might not be able to do it that well. And so if it's something that is incredibly delicate, specific, technical, detailed, that the quality will fail if you do it too quickly, then that's obviously going to be the trade-off that you experience. So there's lots of pros of speed. There's lots of cons of speed. I think there are definitely a lot of benefits. And if I speak in my personal context of living and working in Korea for the last 13 years, and I now look at how Europe does business, there's definitely some areas where Europe is incredibly slow in getting things done. And sometimes that is due to bureaucracy. Sometimes it's just due to expectations. But I do think that, broadly speaking, that if you are, running a business, that you should try to respond to emails within 24 hours. I think that is a general rule of thumb that is as good to work to. Or at the very least, let the person know that you will respond at a certain point of time, but there is a reason that you're not responding right away. That's equally fine. Definitely keeping up with the communication is important to manage the expectations. But also, when it comes to managing expectations, speed is a key part of that. When I have clients asking me for us to provide our service within an impossible time frame, I don't say, okay, yes, and we will do our best. What I tell them is that's not going to be possible. We will try to do our best, but usually the amount of time frame that it takes to do that is, X, Y, Z. And that openness and dialogue on setting of expectations perhaps is the key point. If you set expectations at a certain level and are then able to exceed them, then you end up with a very satisfied counterpart. If you set expectations and do not meet them, you end up with a dissatisfied counterpart. If you have no expectations, you rely on what their expectations are. You don't know what their expectations are in that regard, then you're probably also going to end up with a dissatisfied counterpart. So setting expectations when it comes to speed is really important, because your idea of what is fast might not be the other person's. What your idea of slow might be not like the other person's. So matching those expectations is a key part of speed. I do want to end by saying that there are different sides to speed. I do hope that in your own personal situation, you're not in a case where, or a situation where speed is the only thing that is required, because I think definitely it will be hard to work in that environment continuously and sustainably. And I do basically advocate to have a rationalization of speed to be, in some cases, fast, where it is possible, it is needed, it is the most important value, but in other cases to be a little bit more flexible to understand that speed should not be the be-all and end-all in that particular case. I think if we work in that particular way, we will be able to get stuff done in the most productive and sustainable way, and ultimately employee satisfaction could be higher if you allow that flexibility to come, and we're not always seeking for everything to be done as soon as possible. Thank you for watching this video, and see you again soon on another Get Stuff Done video.